I stared at the text message on my phone screen, reading it over and over until the words burned into my brain. The locks are changed. You don't live here anymore. Don't bother coming back. Happy 18th birthday, Victoria. My own father had let his wife kick me out on my birthday with a text message. I was standing in the rain outside the house I'd lived in my entire life, holding a single duffel bag with everything I owned. This was the man who used to read me bedtime stories, who promised he'd always protect me. How did I end up homeless on the day I became an adult? And how did I discover the one secret that would make them both beg me to forgive them? If this story already touches your heart, please subscribe and stay with me to hear what happened next. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. You might feel less alone in your own struggles. My name is Emma Martinez, and I'm 18 years old. 3 months ago, my life was actually pretty normal. I was a senior at Roosevelt High, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working part-time at Chapter and Verse, this cozy little bookstore downtown. My biggest worries were AP Calculus and whether I'd get into State University's journalism program. I lived with my dad in the same 2-story house where I'd grown up, the one my mom had decorated with her paintings and filled with the smell of her famous chocolate chip cookies. My mom died when I was 15, breast cancer. It happened fast, diagnosis to funeral in 8 months. My dad completely fell apart. I mean, I get it. They'd been high school sweethearts, married for 20 years. She was his whole world. But after she died, I became his caretaker. I'd make sure he ate dinner, do the laundry, pay the bills when he forgot. I held his hand through the worst grief I've ever witnessed. Some nights I'd find him crying in their bedroom, holding her clothes. I'd sit with him until he fell asleep, then tiptoe to my room and cry for both of us. For 2 years, it was just me and Dad against the world. We had this routine. I'd make coffee before school, he'd pick me up from work, we'd watch old movies and eat takeout on Friday nights. It wasn't perfect, but we were healing together. I thought we were a team. I thought nothing could break the bond between us, especially after losing Mom. Then he met Victoria. It started innocently enough. Dad had finally started therapy, and his counselor suggested he try dating when he felt ready. Victoria was a divorced real estate agent who specialized in luxury homes. She was everything my mom wasn't. Perfectly polished, always dressed like she was going to a business meeting, the kind of woman who ordered salads with dressing on the side. My mom had been warm and messy and real, with paint under her fingernails and flour in her hair. Victoria was cold and calculating, but she paid attention to my dad in a way he desperately needed. Their first date was 6 months ago. Within 2 weeks, she was staying over 3 nights a week. Within a month, she'd moved in completely, taking over my parents' bedroom and redecorating the living room with modern furniture that looked expensive but felt like a hotel lobby. She threw away my mom's favorite coffee mug, the chipped blue one with sunflowers, claiming it was unsanitary. When I asked Dad about it, he just shrugged and said Victoria was helping us move forward. I tried to be supportive. I really did. Dad seemed happier, and after watching him suffer for 2 years, that should have been enough for me. But Victoria made it clear from day one that I was in her way. She'd make little comments about how some 18-year-olds need to learn independence, or how children shouldn't have opinions about adult decisions. When I'd come home from work, she'd be sitting in my mom's favorite chair, scrolling through her phone, acting like I was interrupting her peace by existing in my own home. The wedding was 2 months ago. A small ceremony at City Hall with just me, Victoria's sister, and Dad's brother as witnesses. I wore the black dress I'd bought for my mom's funeral because it was the only formal thing I owned. Victoria wore white Chanel and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. During the vows, when Dad promised to forsake all others, I swear Victoria looked directly at me. That night, they went to Napa for a week-long honeymoon. I thought maybe things would get better when they got back, that Victoria would settle into being a stepmom, and we could find our rhythm as a blended family. I was so naive, the changes started immediately. Victoria announced that since she was now lady of the house, there would be new rules. My curfew was moved from midnight to 10 p.m., even on weekends. I wasn't allowed to have friends over without 24 hours' notice. I had to ask permission to use the kitchen after 8 p.m. When I protested to Dad, he said Victoria was just trying to bring structure to our home and I should respect her authority. But the worst part was how she talked about my mom. She'd make comments about how the house felt heavy with the past and how we needed to let go of yesterday's ghosts. She convinced Dad to pack up most of Mom's things, claiming they were keeping him from healing. I came home one day to find my mom's easel and paints in garbage bags on the curb. When I ran inside crying and demanding an explanation, Victoria calmly explained that shrine keeping was unhealthy, and she was helping our family move forward. "Your mother is gone." "Emma," she said, not even looking up from her laptop. "The sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be." I looked at my dad, waiting for him to defend Mom's memory, to tell Victoria she'd crossed a line. Instead, he just stood there looking at his shoes and mumbled something about how Victoria was probably right. That's when I realized I was losing him too. Things got worse after that. Victoria started going through my things, claiming she was helping me declutter. I'd come home to find clothes missing, books donated to charity, photos of me and Mom mysteriously disappeared. When I confronted her, she'd act confused and suggest I was being overly sentimental or hoarding memories. She also started monitoring my phone and computer use, saying that since I lived in their house, I had no right to privacy. She went through my text messages and interrogated me about my friends, especially if I mentioned feeling unhappy at home. She convinced Dad that I was spreading lies about our family dynamic and that I needed to learn discretion. The gaslighting was relentless. If I got upset about something Victoria did, she'd tell Dad I was having episodes and suggested I might need therapy for my anger issues. If I tried to talk to Dad privately, she'd interrupt or call him away for some urgent matter. She'd rearrange my room while I was at school, then act confused when I noticed, suggesting I was imagining things or being paranoid. My grades started slipping because I couldn't concentrate at home. Victoria had taken over the dining room table as her home office, so I had to do homework in my bedroom, which she'd painted a color I hated and filled with furniture that felt foreign. My friends noticed I was becoming withdrawn and anxious, but when they asked what was wrong, I didn't know how to explain that my stepmother was slowly erasing my existence in my own home. The breaking point came 3 weeks before my birthday. I'd been accepted to State University's journalism program with a partial scholarship. I was so excited. It was my dream school, and the acceptance letter felt like hope for the future. I ran into the house waving the letter, calling for Dad. I found him and Victoria in the kitchen, and I started babbling about how proud Mom would have been, how this was exactly what I'd been working toward. Victoria's face went ice cold. "State University?" she said. "That's expensive. Even with a scholarship, there are still costs. Room and board, books, fees. Where exactly do you think that money is coming from?" I looked at Dad confused. "The college fund," I said. "The one Mom and Dad set up when I was little. We've been adding to it for years." Victoria and Dad exchanged a look that made my stomach drop. "Emma, sweetheart," Dad said, not meeting my eyes. "That money? We had some unexpected expenses. The wedding, Victoria's medical bills from her surgery last year, some investments that didn't work out." "What are you saying?" I whispered. "The college fund is gone," Victoria said matter-of-factly. "But don't worry, there are community colleges nearby and you can live at home and work full-time. It might actually be better for you to start smaller anyway." I felt like the floor had opened up beneath me. "Gone? How is it gone?" "That money was mine. Mom made me promise I'd use it for college. She worked extra shifts at the hospital for 3 years to build that fund." "Your mother made a lot of promises she couldn't keep," Victoria said coldly. "But we're your family now, and we're making practical decisions for your future." I turned to Dad, desperate. "Tell me this isn't real. Tell me you didn't spend my college money without asking me." He finally looked at me, and I saw guilt and shame in his eyes, but also something else: resignation. "I'm sorry, Emma, we didn't have a choice. Victoria needed that surgery and insurance didn't cover everything. You'll find another way. You're smart and resourceful." "Like your mother was," Victoria added with a cruel smile. That night, I called my best friend Chloe, sobbing. She came over and helped me look up student loans, work-study programs, anything that might help me afford college without my parents' support. But deep down, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. My mom had been obsessive about that college fund. She'd shown me the statements every year on my birthday, explaining how compound interest worked, making me promise I'd use every penny to build the career I dreamed of. There was no way she would have left that money unprotected. The next morning, I decided to check for myself. I'd helped Dad with paperwork after Mom died, so I knew where he kept important documents. While he and Victoria were at their Saturday morning farmers market run, I went through his filing cabinet. What I found made me physically sick. The college fund hadn't been slowly depleted by medical expenses and bad investments. It had been systematically emptied over the past 6 months, always in amounts just under $10,000 to avoid triggering bank notifications, always coinciding with Victoria's shopping trips and spa visits. There were receipts for a $15,000 handbag, a $25,000 investment in Victoria's sister's boutique, $30,000 for Victoria's medical procedure, which, according to the receipts, was actually cosmetic surgery, a mommy makeover she'd wanted for years, but that wasn't even the worst part. Hidden in the back of the file was a copy of my mother's will, the real one, not the simplified version Dad had shown me after she died. According to this document, my mother had left me the house, the entire house, to be held in trust until I turned 18, at which point it would become mine completely. She'd also established a separate trust for my education, managed by her brother, my Uncle James, who lived in Seattle. Dad was supposed to be the caretaker of the house until I came of age, but ownership was meant to transfer to me on my 18th birthday. I sat on Dad's office floor, holding papers that proved my entire life had been a lie. Not only had Dad and Victoria stolen my college fund, they'd been living in my house for months, planning God knows what for my actual birthday. The date on Mom's will was just 2 weeks before she died, which meant she'd known her time was running out and had specifically planned to protect me from exactly this situation. My hands were shaking as I took photos of every document with my phone. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I had 2 weeks until my birthday to figure out what to do with this information. 2 weeks to decide whether to confront Dad and give him a chance to explain, or whether to take legal action immediately. I chose to wait and see what they would do on my birthday, hoping against hope that Dad would remember his promises to Mom and do the right thing. I thought maybe he'd surprise me by revealing that the college fund was safe after all, that Victoria's cruelty was some kind of test or misunderstanding. Instead, I got that text message. I was at work on the morning of my 18th birthday, covering the opening shift at the bookstore. My phone buzzed around 10 a.m. and I saw Victoria's name on the screen. For a split second, I thought maybe it was a birthday message, an olive branch, a sign that we could start over now that I was officially an adult. The locks are changed. You don't live here anymore. Don't bother coming back. Happy 18th birthday, Victoria. I read it 3 times before it sank in. Then my phone rang. It was Dad. Emma, he said, and his voice was strained like he'd been crying. Victoria thinks, we both think it's time for you to spread your wings. You're 18 now and you need to learn independence. Dad, what are you talking about? I said, even though I knew exactly what he was talking about. You can't live with us anymore. Victoria feels uncomfortable with another adult woman in the house, and I have to prioritize my marriage. I'm sure you understand. Where am I supposed to go? I whispered. You're resourceful. You'll figure it out. There are shelters, friends' couches, lots of options for someone your age. It's my birthday, Dad. There was a long silence. Then I know. I'm sorry, sweetheart. But this is what's best for everyone. He hung up. I stood in the bookstore, surrounded by stories about families who loved each other, holding a phone that had just delivered the most devastating news of my life. My boss, Mrs. Chen, found me crying in the young adult section 20 minutes later. When I managed to explain what had happened, she immediately offered to let me stay in the apartment above the bookstore for a few nights while I figured things out. That evening, I went to the house, my house, to get my belongings. Victoria had been thorough. There were garbage bags on the front porch containing clothes, toiletries, and a few personal items, but most of my things were missing. My laptop, the jewelry my mom had left me, photo albums, my high school yearbooks, all gone. Victoria answered the door wearing my mother's wedding ring, which I'd never seen her wear before. Everything's there, she said, not inviting me in. David wanted to give you some cash to help with the transition, but I reminded him that you need to learn to be self-sufficient. Where's my dad? I asked. He's not available. He's finding this very difficult, as you can imagine. Your presence would just make it harder for him. I looked past her into the living room of the house my mother had left to me, and saw Dad sitting in his chair, his back to the door. He didn't turn around. He didn't say goodbye. That night, lying on Mrs. Chen's couch, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them destroy my future the way they'd destroyed my mother's memory. I had proof of what they'd done, and I was going to use it. The next morning, I called my Uncle James in Seattle. I hadn't spoken to him since Mom's funeral, partly because Dad had discouraged contact with Mom's side of the family, saying it was too painful for him. But James had been my mom's closest sibling, and she'd trusted him enough to name him in her will. Emma? James sounded shocked to hear from me. Honey, how are you? I've been wondering about you for months. Uncle James, I said, trying not to cry. I need to ask you something. Did Mom leave me any money for college? There was a pause. Emma, sweetheart, your mom left you a lot more than college money. Didn't your dad explain the trust arrangements to you? You should have been getting monthly updates from the financial advisor. I told him everything, about Victoria, about being kicked out, about discovering the real will, about the missing college fund. James listened without interrupting, and by the time I finished, I could hear the fury in his voice. Emma, I want you to listen to me carefully, he said. Your mother set up 2 separate trusts for you. The education trust has $180,000 in it, and I've been managing it since she died. It's grown to almost $200,000 now. The house trust was supposed to transfer to you on your 18th birthday, which means you've legally owned that house since yesterday. Your father was just supposed to be the caretaker. So the house is really mine? Emma, the house has been yours for 24 hours. Your father and his wife are squatters. James immediately connected me with his lawyer friend Marcus Chen, no relation to my boss, just a coincidence, who specialized in estate law. Marcus agreed to take my case pro bono after hearing the details. Within 48 hours, he'd filed paperwork to begin eviction proceedings against Dad and Victoria, frozen the remaining assets in the college fund account, and initiated a criminal investigation into the theft of trust funds. The first sign that Dad and Victoria knew they were in trouble came 3 days later. Dad called me at work, and for the first time in months, his voice sounded like the father I remembered from before Mom died. Emma, sweetheart, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding about your birthday. Victoria feels terrible about how everything happened. What kind of misunderstanding? I asked. Well, we were thinking you might want to come home. Victoria has been cleaning out the guest room for you, making it really nice. We could all sit down and work out the college situation together. I almost laughed. The guest room? In my own house? What do you mean, your house? I mean the house Mom left to me in her will. The house I've legally owned since Tuesday. The house you and Victoria are currently trespassing in. Silence. Emma, I think someone has been giving you bad legal advice. Your mother left the house to both of us, with the understanding that you'd inherit it eventually, after I didn't need it anymore. Dad, I have a copy of Mom's will. The real one. I know about both trusts. I know about Uncle James, and I know exactly how much of my college fund you and Victoria spent on her shopping sprees. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, we need to talk about this in person. As a family, we're not a family anymore, I said. Families don't throw each other away on their 18th birthday. I hung up. The next few days were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and staying strong while Marcus explained the process of reclaiming my property and my stolen money. The hardest part was the waiting, knowing that Dad and Victoria were still living in my house, probably destroying evidence and trying to figure out how to spin the situation in their favor. A week after my birthday, I got a call from Victoria. Not Dad, Victoria. Emma, she said, and her voice was different. Less cold, more desperate. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I want to make things right between us. By giving me back my house and my money? I don't know what your uncle has been telling you, but there are 2 sides to every story. Your father has been struggling financially since your mother's medical bills, and I've been trying to help keep the family afloat. Maybe some mistakes were made, but they came from a place of love. Love? I said. Victoria, you threw away my mother's belongings, spent my college fund on cosmetic surgery, and had me kicked out of my own house via text message. Which part of that was love? You're young, Emma. You don't understand how complicated adult finances can be. But I'm willing to sit down and work out a payment plan for the college money, and of course you can move back home. We're family now. The time for family meetings was before you stole from me, I said. Now it's a legal matter. Don't threaten me, little girl. You have no idea what you're getting into. And there was the real Victoria again. 2 days later, Marcus called with news. Emma, I think you should sit down for this, he said. We've been investigating Victoria's background, and it turns out this isn't her first marriage to a widower with assets. What do you mean? She was married to a man in Portland 5 years ago. He died of a sudden heart attack 8 months after they married, leaving her his house and life insurance. Before that, she was married to a widower in Sacramento. He died in a car accident after 2 years of marriage. She inherited everything both times. I felt cold. Are you saying... I'm not saying anything definitive yet. But both deaths are being investigated now. And Victoria's financial patterns in those relationships are remarkably similar to what she's been doing with your father. She isolates the husband from his children, gains control of the finances, and eliminates anyone who might challenge her inheritance. Oh my God. We have to warn Dad. We've already notified the authorities. Emma, your father is being contacted by police as we speak. That evening, Dad called me. He was crying so hard I could barely understand him. Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I let her. God, what have I done to you? What have I done to your mother's memory? Dad, are you safe? Are you away from Victoria? She's gone. She packed up everything this morning and left. Just disappeared. The police came to talk to both of us about her previous marriages. And when they left, she was making phone calls and throwing things in suitcases. She's gone, Emma. Dad, I need you to listen to me. You need to get yourself somewhere safe and call Marcus Chen. We'll figure out the legal stuff later, but right now I need to know that you're okay. I don't deserve your concern, he said. I threw away the most important person in my life for a woman who was probably planning to kill me. Dad, don't talk like that. We'll get through this. Emma, I need you to know, I never stopped loving you. Even when I was doing those terrible things, even when I let her convince me that you were the problem, I knew in my heart that I was betraying everything your mother stood for. I was just so scared of being alone again, and Victoria made me feel needed in a way I hadn't felt since your mom got sick. I was crying now, too. I know, Dad, I understand. Can you ever forgive me? I thought about everything that had happened. The theft, the lies, the cruelty, being thrown away like garbage on my birthday. I thought about my mom and what she would want for our family. I thought about the fact that my dad had been a good father for 16 years before grief and fear turned him into someone I didn't recognize. We'll work on it, I said. But first you need to get help. Real help. Therapy, grief counseling, whatever it takes to figure out how you lost yourself so completely. Anything, he said. I'll do anything to earn back your trust. If this story is breaking your heart like it broke mine, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments if you've ever felt completely misunderstood or betrayed. The legal resolution took 3 months. Victoria had fled to Mexico, but not before emptying several bank accounts that contained money stolen from her previous husband's estates. There was an international warrant out for her arrest, and authorities in 3 states were investigating her for fraud, identity theft, and suspected murder. Dad cooperated fully with the investigation, turning over financial records and communications that helped build the case against her. The house was officially transferred back to my name, though I let Dad continue living there while he got back on his feet emotionally and financially. The college fund money was completely gone, but Uncle James had preserved the education trust, so I was actually in better financial shape for college than I'd ever been. More importantly, Dad started intensive therapy and began the long process of understanding how he'd been manipulated and how his grief had made him vulnerable to a predator. The day Victoria was finally arrested, caught trying to cross back into the U.S. with a fake passport, Dad and I were having coffee in our kitchen. Our kitchen, in our house, the way Mom had always intended. I keep thinking about what your mom would say about all this, Dad said, staring into his mug. I think she'd say that Victoria was exactly the kind of person she was trying to protect me from when she wrote that will, I said. Your mom was always smarter than me. Even at the end, when she was so sick, she was still thinking 10 steps ahead, still trying to take care of you. She was taking care of both of us, Dad. The will didn't just protect me, it protected you too. If Victoria had succeeded in whatever she was planning, you would have ended up with nothing. Dad nodded slowly. I owe your mother an apology I can never give her. And I owe you. You owe me a father, I said. The one I had before grief and fear made you forget who you were. That's what I want back. What if I can't find him again? Then we'll build something new. But Dad, I need you to promise me something. Promise me that you'll never let anyone make you choose between them and me again. Promise me that if someone asks you to betray me or Mom's memory, you'll remember this conversation. I promise, he said, and for the first time in over a year, I believed him. Starting college that fall felt like emerging from a long, dark tunnel. I was studying journalism at State University, living in the dorms, and slowly rebuilding my relationship with Dad. He visited every few weeks, and we'd walk around campus while he told me about his therapy sessions, and I told him about my classes. It wasn't the same as before Mom died, and it wasn't the same as before Victoria, but it was something honest and real. The criminal trial lasted 6 months. Dad testified against Victoria, explaining how she'd manipulated him into betraying me and stealing my inheritance. The prosecution painted a picture of a serial predator who targeted grieving widowers, isolated them from their support systems, and systematically robbed them blind. The evidence was overwhelming: financial records, recorded phone calls, testimony from the families of her previous husbands, and digital communications that revealed the calculated nature of her crimes. Victoria was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. The families of her previous husbands were finally getting justice, and their children were able to recover some of the assets she'd stolen from them. But more than that, her conviction sent a message that elder abuse and family financial exploitation wouldn't be tolerated. The day of the sentencing, I sat in the courthouse with Dad, holding his hand while the judge read Victoria's crimes out loud. When it was over, Dad turned to me with tears in his eyes. "Your mom would be proud of you," he said. "You fought for yourself the way she would have fought for you." She did fight for me, Dad. That's what the will was, her final fight to protect me from exactly what happened. I failed her. I failed you. But you came back, I said. When it mattered, when I needed you to choose between Victoria's lies and the truth, you chose the truth. That's what matters now. Looking back now, I understand that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you become the people you have to protect yourself from. My dad wasn't evil. He was broken and vulnerable and desperate not to be alone. Victoria exploited that vulnerability the same way she'd exploited other grieving men, turning love into a weapon and family bonds into chains. But I also learned that the truth has its own power. My mom knew that Dad might not be strong enough to resist someone like Victoria, so she built legal protections that would activate when I needed them most. She couldn't be there to fight for me in person, but she'd found a way to fight for me from beyond the grave. The hardest lesson was learning that love isn't always enough. Dad loved me throughout the entire ordeal, but his love was compromised by his fear, his grief, and his desperate need to avoid facing his pain. Victoria understood that and used it against both of us. Real love, the kind my mom had for me, the kind I was learning to have for myself, doesn't compromise. It doesn't throw people away for convenience. It doesn't choose comfort over truth. I'm in my junior year now, studying investigative journalism and planning to specialize in financial crimes against families. I want to tell stories like mine, stories about people who fight back against those who would exploit their trust and steal their futures. Dad and I have rebuilt our relationship into something stronger than it was before. Not perfect, but honest, with clear boundaries and mutual respect. He still lives in Mom's house, but we both understand it's my house now. He pays rent, helps with maintenance, and respects the fact that I make the decisions about our family home. We have dinner together every Sunday when I'm home from school, and we always start the meal with a moment of silence for Mom. It's our way of remembering that she's still part of our family, still protecting us, still guiding us toward the people we're meant to be. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found Mom's will, if I hadn't had Uncle James to call, if I'd just accepted being homeless and abandoned on my 18th birthday. But then I remember that Mom didn't raise me to accept injustice quietly. She taught me to ask questions, to demand answers, to stand up for myself even when the people I love tell me I'm wrong. Victoria is serving her sentence in a federal penitentiary in Texas. She'll be eligible for parole in 10 years, when I'll be 28 and probably starting my own family. I don't think about her often anymore, but when I do, I feel something I didn't expect: pity. She spent her life stealing from people who loved and trusted her, and in the end, she ended up with nothing. No real relationships, no one who would visit her in prison, no legacy except the pain she caused. Dad remarried 2 years ago, to a wonderful woman named Sarah, who's a grief counselor and who insisted on meeting me before their first date. Sarah lost her first husband to cancer, so she understands Dad's journey in a way I never could. More importantly, she encourages his relationship with me instead of threatening it. She helped him renovate the guest room in Mom's house into a proper space for me when I visit. and she always makes sure there are fresh flowers at Mom's grave on her birthday. The day before my college graduation, Dad and I drove out to the cemetery to visit Mom's grave. I told her about my job offer at the investigative journalism nonprofit in San Francisco, about my plans to expose financial predators who target vulnerable families, about how proud I was of Dad for doing the hard work of healing. "I wish you could see who we've become," I said to her headstone. "We're not the same people we were when you left us, but we're people you'd be proud of." Dad put his arm around me. "She can see us," he said, "and she knows that everything she did to protect you was worth it. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more stories of strength and vindication. Have you ever experienced a family betrayal or had to fight to be believed? Share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about everything that happened. Losing my childhood home for months, being homeless on my 18th birthday, having to fight my own father in court to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The truth is, I'm not angry anymore. What happened to me taught me that I'm stronger than I knew, that my mother's love extends beyond death, and that justice, while slow, is still possible. But most importantly, it taught me that family isn't just about blood or shared DNA. Family is about showing up for each other when it's hard, choosing each other over convenience and protecting each other's dreams instead of stealing them. Victoria never understood that, which is why she ended up alone despite all her manipulation and theft. My real family, Dad, Uncle James, Sarah, my chosen family of friends who supported me through the darkest time in my life, that family is stronger now than it ever was before. We've been tested by betrayal and loss, and we chose each other anyway. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and fighting for your future? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was working against you all along? How do you rebuild trust after betrayal? The stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. We believe in supporting young people and treating all family members with love and respect. These stories are meant to inspire reflection on family relationships and the importance of compassion and truth. Any resemblance to real people, events, or families is purely coincidental and unintentional. These narratives carry no specific cultural, political, or religious implications.